Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. My name is Liv. I'm the manager of Shelter Behavior Services at Animal Humane Society. And I'm here today to give you a few updates on some exciting things that we have going on in our Golden Valley shelter regarding some updates to cat housing and feline behavior work. So we're really excited to be able to share that. I know there's been a lot of you that have been asking what we're doing for cats and when we're going to be doing that. So first we'll start talking about some of the updates that we have coming to the way we house cats in shelter. Now we do currently follow all humane housing standards and best practices. But as you know, as leaders in animal welfare, we're always working to improve. And specifically, we're working to reduce fear, anxiety, and stress in these animals that come into shelter. The shelter is a uniquely stressful place. It can be really, really scary. And so animals that are otherwise friendly and social can come into the shelter and have a very different experience. It can be very scary. We also want to reduce to work URI, which is upper respiratory infection. So URI is viral. It's something that a cat lives with for their whole life, and almost all cats have it. But stress can really flare symptoms. And when cats become symptomatic, even though it's viral, they can get bacterial infections at the same time. And so reducing stress really reduces how long those symptoms last and the severity of those symptoms as well. We also are looking to support medical recovery. And so as you know, we have a really extraordinary veterinary care team, and they're able to do really remarkable things with surgeries and specialty care and all sorts of really cool stuff like that. And so we really want to make sure that both our housing and our behavior work supports the animal from all angles, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. So what we know is that cats need 8 square feet of space to have a housing unit be considered humane. So what about vertical space? There's a little bit of debate on whether vertical space actually counts as part of that 8 square feet. But we know that cats need to stretch their tail up to full extent, the same way they do other appendages. So cats need to be able to stretch that tail up and extend all the way to the tip. Cats also stretch up, and so if you have cats at home, you know they probably like to stretch up and scratch on furniture, and they do those big upward vertical stretches. So vertical space is really important for cats to display normal behavior. There's also the perception of a cat in a cage. It's negative to both the cat and the customer. So a lot of times we see a cat in a cage and we go, that just doesn't look quite right. Well, cats feel the same way. They go into cage and just the perception of having sort of those bars in front of them, it doesn't feel quite right to a lot of our feline friends. So we're working to see how we can improve that. So we'll kind of talk now about the future of feline behavior work, because as we know, that improved housing needs to go hand in hand with behavior support as well. So we need specially trained staff and volunteers to complete this work. And we did just receive a Petco grant to help with funding for new housing and also adding a third behavior specialist to our team. So right now, our shelter behavior team consists only of me and 2 specialists. And we know that we really need to expand that team to be able to expand the behavior work that we're doing. So we're going to be able to do that here. We're also doing a feline behavior volunteer pilot. We'll launch it as soon as it's safe to do so, as soon as we can welcome volunteers back into our building. We will start this with just a couple of volunteers to start that are going to be working hands-on with some of our more behaviorally challenged felines. And then once we really get that rolling and well established, we'll certainly add and expand that program. We'll start in Golden Valley, but our hope is to expand this to all of our other sites as well. We're also increasing the use of behavioral medication. Specifically in cats, we're using a medication called gabapentin. Now, gabapentin is actually a nerve pain medication. It's an anti-seizure medication, but it's been shown to really reduce stress in cats and kind of take that edge off. And so we've been using it with pretty great success in shelter over the last couple of months. And so if there's one thing we've really been able to do is dedicate a lot of time and resources over the last couple of weeks to cats that need just an extra boost or some extra TLC when they're in shelter. And so we've really seen great success with using gabapentin in cats that are suffering from shelter stress as well. So what's our ultimate goal here? Well, of course, place more cats. Specifically, we're looking at placing cats through AHS adoption with good home histories that are suffering from shelter stress. So historically, these are cats that we would reach out to our rescue partners for. So if a cat is in shelter, we think they'll do well in a home, but they just can't function in the shelter environment, we'll reach out to foster-based rescues and transfer the cats to our partners. Now, we know that our rescue partners have finite resources as well. And so the more cats we ask for placement for from our rescue partners, the more strain it puts on our rescue partners' resources, which are a lot smaller and a lot more resource restricted than even AHS is. And so what this is going to do is allow us to place these cats through our own adoption processes. This will also help us take additional behavior cases that require advanced behavior work from our partners. So right now, if our rescue partners have a particularly challenged cat or dog, they reach out and ask if there's anything we can do and if we can accept it into our behavior programs. This work will allow us to do that. It will allow us to take on more animals with more behavioral challenges. So we're working on getting a really good process in place and learning as much as we possibly can about the kind of success that we can have with cats in the shelter environment and what that success looks like. So first, we'll just kind of talk about our current colonies and some of our current ways we house cats. So we know that our colonies support cat needs and behavior work. Our offices do as well. So we have a number of really awesome staff that actually allow us to house cats in their offices that may be struggling with shelter life. The biggest two things that cats need to come around is time and space. And with a high volume shelter like Animal Humane Society is, a place where we try to do the most for the most, time and space are the two most precious resources. And so we can find ourselves sometimes challenged in supporting these animals in the best way we can, because sometimes it's a little bit of a resource pull. So these are what a couple of our colonies currently look like in Golden Valley. You know, they're nice, bright, big spaces. These are up in our adoption area, so customers can come in, they can sit and spend time with cats. Cats can stretch and run and jump and bounce and display a lot of really natural behaviors. We also have colonies. We have one large colony, but we also have these spaces that are a little bit smaller. So we have these solo and double colony spaces. So they still have extra space where these cats, it really promotes cats' natural behaviors, but they're a little bit smaller. So they use limited space, you know, in a little bit of a different way, a little bit more efficiently if you only have limited space to work with. So these are spaces where we're drawing a lot of our planning from, spaces that we already know work, and spaces that may be sensitive to spacing limitations or spacing issues in other areas of the shelters. So next step then is using what we know we like while making the best use of space. So what we are looking at in design right now are these cat towers. These are actually designed by the company called Mason, and the picture's a little bit grainy because these pictures are directly out of their catalog. And so you'll notice the top left cat towers look a little bigger than the bottom right cat towers. These towers are customizable. So they're customizable in height, depth, width, and even the number of shelving units that are in each one of them. And so what we can do is we can work really closely with Mason to say, well, here's kind of what we want to see, here's kind of what we need, and then they can put together an estimate of what that might cost and what that might look like. So this is one of the designs that we're looking at. So where do we start? Where do we start changing around cat housing? Well, we're going to start in one of our wards in Golden Valley. So this is our C ward, or currently our cat URI, upper respiratory infection quarantine ward. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to necessarily stay this ward. This is probably, well, maybe going to turn into a cat behavior treatment ward. So right now you see we have those sort of roll away, what we call bangers, or those multi-cat housing units. And in the back, there's actually 3 kennel runs that aren't currently being used. So we went in there and said, what can we really do with this? Knowing that we like having a lot more space, cats need more space, how can we create that here? So what we're looking at is putting those cat towers right now where those silver bangers are. And in the back, we're going to be building up to that sort of blue concrete block line. We're going to build up these kennels and have basically 3 cat quote colony spaces, if you will, in the back there. So just even more spaces where we can have cats out exhibiting natural behaviors, giving them that space where they can roam around, where they can stretch, they can wiggle, and of course have places to hide away as well. And so all of this gives cats more choice and control over their environment. When animals feel in control of what's going on, it greatly reduces the stress that they experience as a result of maybe some different circumstances that they're not used to. We also have a place, this is in the back of one of our other cat wards. On the left is a space that used to be one of these sort of larger housing spaces. And then years ago when we housed wildlife in Golden Valley, wildlife was housed back there. It's kind of evolved in its use. On the right is actually the exact same space, but down in one of our former animal house boarding wards. So this hardware did stay and the space did continue to be used as one of these sort of larger spaces to house cats. And you see in the center there in that right-hand photo, there's what we call a guillotine door. So this space can be used for a number of cats to have both spaces or separated so that each cat only has one side. So we are going to get in that hardware that you see to put into that space that you see on the left side to create even more of what we call colony spaces. We use kind of that term colony just to refer to a bigger space to house cats, not necessarily a place where we would put a number of cats at any given time. It certainly depends on the individual needs of the cat that's going into that space. So through this process, we also want to see where our opportunities are for improvement for humane investigations and large intakes. So when we have a cat case, oftentimes we see 40, 50, 60 plus cats come in at any given time. And it can be difficult to figure out where to put those cats. Oftentimes they're coming from situations where they haven't been socialized with people. They've lived, just with a number of other cats for their whole life. They oftentimes have medical issues that they need to stay in quarantine for. And sometimes with legalities, we're required to hold on to these cats without being able to pursue outcomes for them for a number of days or even number of weeks. And so what do we do with these cats? It can be a really big challenge when we get in that many cats all at once. So what we're looking at doing is creating spaces that look similar to these spaces here. So large, more temporary housing, if you will, that can accommodate a number of cats. These cats aren't necessarily used to human presence, but they're used to having each other around and they're used to being able to hide and, kind of come out and roam and then go find another hiding space. And so these spaces allow for that. It allows us to put in hiding spaces and it also allows us to house those cats with other cats in an area separated from our current population that we have at any given time. So this next photo here just shows sort of a different style, a different design of group housing spaces. These photos are actually from some different shelters that use like this pop-up type space as their visitation area. They don't have the luxury of having visitation rooms, so they had to create one. But what a great place, right, to be able to contain cats in a larger area than those bangers or those wall cages. And so these are two of the designs that we're considering that we're, again, working with Mason. Mason's the company we're working with to see what can we do and where can we put these and how can we use what we know about cat behavior and the individuals to make sure that their experience at AHS is as humane and as stress-free as possible. So we're going to switch gears a little bit here to talk about our Woodbury play yard. So we're very excited that we're able to forge ahead with this project. For a very, very long time, we weren't able to put a play yard out in Woodbury, and that was just due to city code. But some things have changed now, some zoning things, and so we're able to do this. So I'm just going to kind of introduce you to the design of this and kind of show you what our inspiration was. So we looked at a lot of play yards and a lot of different designs to come up with what we really liked. And so these two designs here are two different shelters that actually have a number of yards linked together. So instead of having one large yard for dogs to be able to, just kind of run back and forth, they're broken up. And what this allows is for a lot of flexibility in giving dogs play breaks and bringing dogs kind of in and out of that play group to really promote healthy, good, positive social behavior. So these next couple photos just kind of give you an idea. You see that chain link in there has a door, has a gate, they're interconnected. And then this entryway here, it sally port. So it allows for dogs to come in and move in and out of that space without dogs escaping or getting loose. Now this is a photo from a shelter that runs their playgroups a little bit differently. They do use spray bottles and muzzles. We at AHS are committed only to positive reinforcement. The only time we use any aversive tools is during an unsafe interaction. So I just want to point out their management techniques are a little bit different from ours, so that's why you're seeing that. But we don't have any plans on changing our positive reinforcement techniques right now in the way we manage dogs. So next is kind of the actual design of what the play art is going to look like. And so this is where it gets really exciting. So what we did is we actually went out to Woodbury and we blocked out what do we want this to look like. And we actually had animal care go get a dog out of shelter, bring it in so we could see what do these spaces kind of look like with a dog standing in the middle of it. And it's a little bit hard to see, but what you're looking at is actually 3 yards that are 30 feet by 30 feet. And they'll be connected to each other through those sort of center areas, center dividers. They'll have a gate. And then there'll be sort of that sally port area on the front of it. So this allows dogs to come into that space and move in and about through those different yards in a very easy way. So the reason we wanted to go with this design was instead of having a large yard with individual kennels that we could use for break space or bringing dogs in and out, this allows for a little bit more flexibility of space. It allows for either 3 actual play groups to be happening at a time, or it allows for 1 or 2 play groups to be happening at a time with some break space on it, some places where dogs can go and sniff around and still have places, areas to romp and kind of chill and decompress if they're getting a little too overexcited in play group. So these are just a couple more photos now from the ground. I know it's kind of hard to see when it's just wood stakes and string, but hopefully you get the idea of what it's going to look like. If you have any questions at all, reach out to whoever your contact is at Animal Humane Society. If they don't have the answer, they can get a hold of me and I can certainly get you any answers to any questions that you have. So thank you so much for all of your support of Animal Humane Society. We hope you're staying safe, and we hope that we can welcome you back into the building to see this firsthand sooner rather than later. So thanks so much for joining me today.